Welcome to the Parent Tech Support Show, where I empower parents with the tech knowledge they need to know to protect their kids online. My mission is to demystify parental controls, share practical tips, share important guides, and reveal all the tricks kids know so that you can navigate the online world with confidence. I'm your host, Jack Hughes, and because I grew up in this age of digital devices, I have a lot of experience getting around parental controls and doing stuff I wasn't allowed to. Well, those days are now over. Today, I use all my experience and inside information to help parents protect their kids online. Today is my first episode, and it's going to be all about getting started with parental controls on iOS devices, specifically iPhones and iPads. We're going to be talking about built-in parental controls, third-party parental controls, third-party apps. We're going to be talking about another layer using parental controls through the Wi-Fi and cellular services. So we're going to be talking about how you can set up parental controls using Wi-Fi and cellular services. And I decided, since it's the first episode, I'll finish this all off with an extra free layer called OpenDNS, which I believe is one of the best, most underrated things you can use to protect your kids online. So let's move on to the first section, which is using built-in parental controls on iOS devices. And the name that's given to these built-in parental controls is called Screen Time, or Apple Screen Time. And Apple Screen Time is a built-in tool for managing device time usage. It is used to set boundaries. It's used to create healthy digital habits for kids. And it allows you to set up parental controls on your child's iPhone, iPad, Mac, without needing to download any additional apps, without needing to pay for an extra service. Screen time is always going to be built in directly to your child's device. With screen time, you're going to be able to set up daily app limits. So you can set daily limits on specific app categories such as social media, games. For example, you could set up a 1 hour limit for YouTube or TikTok. With Apple Screen Time, you're able to schedule what is called downtime, which is a period when most apps or games are all blocked, but essential functions like calls or messages remain available. So a time where downtime can be useful is your child is going to school, or you have Thanksgiving dinner and you don't want your child to be on their phone all this time, so you can schedule downtime. So from 8 till 3 p.m. So when they're at school, their phone is on downtime, and that prevents them from playing any games. You can turn it so where they can't text most friends or whatever you deem necessary there, which is nice because then when they come home from school or when they're done with homework, it can automatically turn off and they can have access back to their games. Another very important part with Apple Screen Time is content restrictions. With content restrictions, you can block explicit content. You can set age-appropriate filters for websites. You can set limits on apps, so they can't download any apps that is at a certain age. So let's say they want to download an app that requires them to be 17 or older. With Screen Time, you're able to prevent them from downloading that app. Also with Screen Time, you can stop them from downloading PG-13 movies or rated R movies and prevent them from listening to explicit music. Now, I should also have a caveat here that this only blocks them from Apple content. So let me give a little example here. Let's say your child has iTunes or they have Apple TV. Once you set up that filter, it will block all the Apple stuff, but it won't be able to block what's going on Netflix or on Amazon Prime. You have to use a separate service for that. But then again, you can also prevent them from getting those apps. So let's say you set up the restrictions on Apple Music. So no, you set up restrictions on Screen Time, so where they can't listen to explicit music. Now that will work with iTunes and Apple Music because it's Apple's service, but it won't work for Spotify or for Amazon Music. So that is something you want to keep in mind. Luckily, the web browser filter works regardless of what web browser you are using. So you can make sure that's all locked down there. Another thing that screen time offers is communication limits. Now, this is something I hinted at a little bit earlier. Basically, you can restrict who your child can communicate with during certain times. So, for example, you could limit their content list during school hours to immediate family members only, so you can still get in contact with them in case of emergency. You're also able to get activity reports, so you can get a detailed weekly activity reports that show how much time your child spends on different apps and websites, and you can use these insights to have open conversations with your child about their digital habits. So you can see how much time your child spends on YouTube, how much time they spend on Facebook or whatever social media, how much time they spend on Roblox or Minecraft. Now, there are a few tips I highly recommend with screen time, and that is to set and use a strong password. Now, my parents made this mistake many times. They either set a bad password that was easily guessable. So I'll give you an example. The code for our garage door was 5006, and they made the mistake of setting our screen time password as 5006. So that was very easy to get around. Or my brother, for example, he would always just look over their shoulder, and we would run little operations, what we called it, to where we would figure out the screen time that way. So I highly recommend that you set up a really good password, and that you change that password regularly. So in case they do figure it out, you will change it within a month or so, and they can only take advantage of knowing the password for around a month. Another tip I would also highly recommend is to monitor their screen time. Monitoring screen time is very important. And it's like, the way I like to think of it, and a little analogy I like to give to parents is, think you have a jail, right? You have a prison, and it's a state-of-the-art prison. It's the perfect prison you've ever seen. It has motion sensors, it has lasers, all that good stuff. But if you don't have a security guard watching that prison, if you don't have a security guard monitoring those motion sensors and those lasers, then eventually that prisoner will escape the prison, which is why I think it's very important that you also monitor what your child does on screen time. Just occasionally glance through and look at their screen time, see how much time they're spending on different apps. This is a really easy way you can catch them getting around parental controls. One of the ways around parental controls is using apps with backdoor web browsers. So if you see your child is spending hours a day on the settings app, or hours a day on some meaningless app where they really shouldn't be spending a whole lot of time, that's a good indicator that that app has a backdoor on it, and you want to be aware of that. Now, screen time can be very confusing to set up. So I've actually written a guide on my website called the 7 Essential Parental Moves to Protect Your Child's Apple Device. That explains all the basic screen times in super simple terms with graphics and photos, helping you through all of that. You can also get it by signing up. You can get it by signing up for my newsletter on my website at parenttech.support. Again, that will give you a little simple way you can follow along and understand how screen time works. Alrighty, so next section here, third-party parental control apps. Now, why would you want to use third-party parental control apps if you already have iOS, where you already have screen time or the built-in parental controls? Well, while iOS screen time is powerful, sometimes there are additional features that are needed. Third-party parental control apps can help fill these gaps. For example, third-party parental control apps can track your child's location and give driving reports. Third-party parental controls can also stop your child from deleting texts. Third-party controls are also really helpful with cross-platform management. So if your child has an iPhone, but yet they have a Microsoft computer, a lot of third-party controls can work on iPhones and Android, or on iPhones and Microsoft. So with just screen time, you're only limited to iOS or Apple devices. And what's nice about third-party controls is it is across platforms, and it also can provide an extra layer of protection that can go on top of the already built-in parental controls. Now, there are dozens. You could probably find 50 different third-party parental control apps, but a few of my favorites and a few of the industry standard is Bark. Bark is a pretty popular one, probably one of the best options out there. They offer a lot of social media monitoring that's really good for teenagers, but I personally find that to be gimmicky. One of my other favorites is Famisafe. They're another excellent option and one of my personal favorites. There's also Quizno, Norton Family. Some other ones that are good for more accountability would be Net Nanny, or Covenant Eyes is another good option there. There's lots out there, and they all specialize in a little different things, and they're worth taking a look at and researching. Now, these third-party parental control apps are not without their cons or their takeaways. Well, number one, they're not free. They all have subscription fees, and they require monthly or yearly subscriptions, which can add up, especially if you're managing multiple children, anywhere from like $8 a month to like $34 a month, and they can really start adding up. Also, these third-party controls are kind of buggy, and they're not the most performance-oriented because they're third-party, and they tend to drain battery, and they tend to delay the device performance. They tend to be buggy, and they drain the battery. They also break sometimes. Controls can just stop working for some reason because they are buggy and they're not the best. Also, third-party parental controls often have a lot of loopholes and ways to get around them. This has gotten much better in recent years, back when I was a little kid. But because these programs are third-party, and because these programs aren't built by the iPhone manufacturer themselves or from Apple themselves, there are some exploits you can use to get around them. I remember growing up, my family used Kids Lock, and I only had I think it was like an hour of screen time to where I could play video games and to where I could play Roblox or whatever game I was playing at the time. And so you'd press a button and it would unlock my phone and I would be able to play those games. Now, after the 1 hour, the 1 hour was up, my phone would all the apps would lock and all the apps would disappear. But what I figured out is if I turned on my Wi-Fi and then I pressed the button to where it gave me that hour of time to where I could play those games, and then I turned off the Wi-Fi, I could play those games for as long as I wanted for over an hour, and it would never shut off. And it was only till after I turned on the Wi-Fi again was where it remembered that I had to block of apps because my time was up. So I could play games for 3 or 4 hours, even though my screen time was supposed to be 1 hour. That was one of the bugs that these third-party controls have, and there still are a few where you can do this exact exploit and it still works. Moving on to the third section, which is Wi-Fi and cellular parental controls. Starting with Wi-Fi parental controls or network controls. Many modern routers from brands from Google, the Google Nest Wi-Fi, Netgear, come with parental controls features built into their app. So with a Google router, you can set parental controls, you can set screen, or you can set web filters on there. So most modern routers will have parental controls built into it, especially big name routers like Google. But if you don't have that, or if you have an old router, or if you don't have a name brand router, companies like Bark will also have their own home router. With the parental controls on the routers, you can set up internet filters, you can schedule internet access, so where, let's say 12 a.m., the Wi-Fi shuts off and now no one can use the Wi-Fi. But let's say you want to shut off your child's Wi-Fi access, but not your Wi-Fi access. Well, then you can set up specific rules to where it only affects certain devices and it doesn't affect other devices like your your devices. So you can set up stricter filters for your children and turn off those restrictions for your own personal phone. Now, what if your child leaves your house, or they turn off the Wi-Fi and they just use their cellular providers? Well, this is where the cellular service parental controls comes in. Many major cellular services like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile will offer parental control services to help you manage your child's website browsing and app access. With these filters, you can set up content filters to prevent them from accessing adult content, violent sites, or any other inappropriate material while on cellular data. You can also set up data limit management, so you can set caps on the data usage to ensure your child doesn't run through your entire month's data in just a few days. And more often than not, these cellular controls don't usually come at additional cost to what you're already paying for your cellular service. However, sadly, these controls are less customizable than a dedicated parental control services, but they are really good for providing an extra layer of security. Now, let's go on to the last and final section, which is my little tease I gave at the beginning, which is the DNS filter. So, the service I really like to use, or I have used, is called OpenDNS. So, what is OpenDNS? OpenDNS is a service that helps protect your family by filtering internet content on the network DNS level. And it works by controlling what websites are found by your device. So it's called domain name service. Now, I don't fully understand it myself. I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTube videos you can go online and watch that can do a better job explaining it than I can. But essentially, what OpenDNS can do is it can filter adult content on any device that is connected to the Wi-Fi. That includes iPads, iPhones, Macs, computers, or Microsoft computers, even game consoles and smart TVs. You can do that by changing the default DNS number on the devices to OpenDNS's own DNS number. And if you need help figuring all that out, if you need to know where that number is, you can go to OpenDNS.com, and they have guides on how to do that on their website. They have guides how to do that on Xboxes, on iPhones, on routers, loads of guides on OpenDNS.com. Now, there is a problem with just changing the DNS on the device itself, and that is that your child can change the DNS back to the default DNS. Then they can browse adult content without having it restricted. But I highly doubt most kids will be able to figure that out. Majority of people don't even know what a DNS is, but some kids sure are techie and they can figure that out. But OpenDNS also offers a solution, and that is to set up the DNS on the home router itself. And by changing the DNS on the router, you can filter the entire internet for your house. And you can sign up on DNS and make your own custom filter to block all sorts of things that you don't like gambling, nudity, even social media sites. Again, if you want to set up OpenDNS, I'm not affiliated with them by any way. Just go to their website and they have guides. I highly recommend setting it up on your own, on the devices itself, and setting it up on the routers themselves. Now, today we've explored iOS screen time settings, which is the built-in parental controls. We've explored the third-party parental controls, apps like Bark, Quizno, Famisafe. We've also looked at Wi-Fi and cellular-based restrictions and how to use OpenDNS for additional protection. Now, if you found this podcast helpful, I highly recommend that you go check out my newsletter on my website at parenttech.support. There, I share with you more guides and helpful tips when it comes to protecting your kids online. I also keep you updated on the ever-changing online world, what's new, what's dangerous, what you should know for that month. And if you like and subscribe to this video. That will greatly help other parents find my content so I can also help them protect their kids online. Well, that's all for this week, folks. I hope you have a good one. Thank you.